My clothes, they're gone. Swept away. You're not going to look, right? If you look while I change, I swear I'll fire you." Rose Hale's voice trembled just enough to betray the panic she was fighting to hide. She stood ankle-deep in the icy shallows of Crystal River, arms wrapped around herself as if she could will warmth back into her bones. Her hair, usually immaculate and tightly controlled like the rest of her life, clung to her cheeks in wet curls. The woman who once intimidated boardrooms now shivered under the judgment of the Colorado wind. Alex Reed did not turn. He stood several feet away, boots planted firmly on the rocky edge of the riverbank, facing the tall pines as if they were witnesses he needed to reassure. "Take my jacket, ma'am. I won't look." His voice was steady, the voice of a man who'd learned to stay calm in the worst moments. Rose eyed the broad line of his back, irritated at how unshakable he seemed, irritated that she needed him in this absurd moment. She reached out, snatched the heavy black tactical jacket from his hand, and pulled it around herself with rigid movements. The jacket dwarfed her, the hem nearly brushing her knees, smelling faintly of cedar oil and the metallic cold of early morning. She hated that it made her feel safe. The river still roared behind her, as if mocking her loss of control. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, more to herself than to him, stepping out of the water. A CEO, brought down by a stream. Alex finally allowed himself to turn, but only when he could see she was fully wrapped. His eyes flicked once professional, quick, checking for injury, and then settled respectfully on the trees beyond her shoulder. "It wasn't a stream, Miss Hale. They released water upstream a few minutes ago. Sudden current like that can take down a grown man." She didn't answer. She was too aware of how close she'd come to being dragged farther, too aware of how humiliating this could have been if anyone else had seen. Her life was already spinning out of her hands. The last thing she needed was another headline: CEO in scandal, lost clothes, lost control. Rose's jaw clenched. "Let's just get back to the campsite." Alex nodded once, shifting automatically into protective formation half a step behind her, slightly to the left. Years of military discipline shaped every movement. They walked the narrow dirt path skirting the river, pine needles crunching underfoot. The chilly morning air stung her exposed legs, and each gust reminded her she was wrapped in her bodyguard's clothing. Rose hated owing anyone anything, especially a man she barely understood. She kept her eyes forward, pretending the cold didn't bother her, pretending the situation was beneath her. Her mind drifted back to what she was supposed to be doing during this retreat. The board insisted she step away, said it was for her well-being, said the press needed a break from her face while investigators sorted the numbers. But Rose knew better. When the powerful tell you to rest, it means they want you out of the room, out of the decisions, out of the way. She could almost hear Charles Denton's smug voice in the boardroom. "Optics matter. Hale needs to disappear until this blows over." She gritted her teeth. "Everything all right?" Alex asked quietly beside her. She stiffened. "I don't need emotional check-ins, Alex." Wasn't offering emotional anything, just making sure the cold isn't getting worse. She hated that his tone was gentle. A grown woman, a respected executive, fragile under a jacket that wasn't hers. She pulled it tighter anyway. They approached the campsite, a private corner of the Crystal River camp, tucked behind tall pines. The canvas tent stood where they'd left it, smoke still curling faintly from last night's fire pit. Rose stopped abruptly. "Not a word of this to anyone." "I wasn't planning to share it," Alex said simply. "Good." She lifted her chin, reclaiming some measure of dignity. People only help when they want something in return. Alex met her eyes for the first time since the river. "Not all people miss Hale." She felt something tight and uncomfortable twist in her chest. She crushed it quickly. "Just stay in your position," she said sharply. "Don't cross the line." The words tasted like steel, cold, hard, defensive. Alex didn't react. Understood. Rose turned away before he could read anything in her expression. The truth was she hadn't been speaking to him alone. She'd been speaking to every betrayal she'd endured, her late husband, the colleagues who pretended loyalty, the board that now doubted her integrity. The river had taken her clothes. Life had been stripping away more than that for months. She stepped inside the tent, letting the jacket hang from her narrow shoulders. For a brief moment, shielded from Alex's eyes, she allowed herself a fragile breath. "I can handle this. I always have." Yet the trembling wouldn't stop. Outside, She heard Alex moving around the campsite, quiet, efficient, reliable in a way most men weren't. She swallowed, rubbing her arms. She didn't want to depend on anyone. Not again. When she stepped back outside, Alex had already built a fresh fire. Flames crackled, warm and steady, reflecting in his dark eyes when he finally glanced at her. She stood near the fire, letting the heat seep back into her skin. "We should leave Colorado soon," Alex said. "There's too much attention on your case. Too many people who might want you vulnerable." "I'm not vulnerable," she snapped. "What happened at the river was an accident," he finished calmly. "But some accidents aren't random." She stared at him, startled by the implication. "You think someone?" "I think," Alex said, "that when a powerful person is under investigation, anything is possible." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. The fire popped, sending sparks upward, like small truths rising into the air. Rose looked back at the river, still raging in the distance. A quiet dread settled in her stomach. Maybe this morning wasn't just humiliation. Maybe it was a warning. And maybe, though she hated the thought, Alex Reed might be the only person standing between her and whatever was coming next. If you've ever felt the weight of life pulling you under just like Rose did today, go ahead and hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps this story reach more people who believe in justice, resilience, and second chances. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter. Alex had rebuilt the fire to a steady burn by the time Rose stepped closer, the oversized jacket still wrapped tightly around her. The flames cast a warm glow across the small clearing, chasing away the worst of the mountain chill. Yet, despite the heat, Rose felt as if the cold river still clung to her bones. She stood stiffly, refusing to let her shiver be visible. She had built a reputation on composure, and she wasn't about to lose it over a camping trip that had already gone spectacularly wrong. Alex watched the fire for a moment, his posture relaxed but alert in the way only trained men carried themselves. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I checked the trail while you were inside, footprints leading toward the river, 2 sets that aren't ours." Rose's brows pulled together. "This is a popular campsite. Footprints aren't exactly breaking news." "These were fresh," he clarified. "Prints of hiking boots, size 11. Deep heel mark someone heavier, someone who circled twice." She stiffened. "Circled?" Like they were looking for something. A flicker of unease moved through her chest, but she quickly pushed it down. Fear never served her. It was a luxury she couldn't afford. She crossed her arms, more out of defiance than warmth. "People wander. This place isn't Fort Knox." Alex didn't respond immediately. He simply turned one log with a stick, keeping the flame alive. "Maybe," he said finally, "but someone watching you isn't unheard of right now." His tone was gentle, not alarming, yet it still drove a needle through her composure. She inhaled sharply, pulling her gaze to the river that ran dark and restless beyond the trees. "I came here because the board insisted," she said. "They said I needed distance from the investigation. Media pressure. Optics." "You came here," Alex said, "because they wanted you somewhere quiet and controlled, somewhere off the grid." She looked at him sharply. "You're implying something." "I'm pointing out a pattern." His voice remained neutral, but the meaning behind it wasn't. When someone is vulnerable, that's when they get pushed. The crackle of the fire filled the silence. Rose hated that he was right. She hated even more that he knew it. She turned away from him and walked to the edge of the clearing, staring at the river. The jacket swayed around her legs. "I don't need your theories," she said. "I need facts." "Facts will come," Alex replied. "But you should at least acknowledge your situation." She didn't turn. "I'm not acknowledging anything until I'm back in New York." "New York is the problem." She stiffened. "Excuse me?" "Everything happened there," he said calmly. "The missing funds, the doctored reports, the sudden board vote, none of it started in Colorado." There was a beat of silence before Rose exhaled sharply, her breath fogging in the cold air. "The board thinks I'm incompetent," she said bitterly. "They think I've lost touch, that I'm too strict, too rigid, too—" She struggled to find the word. Alex finished it for her. "Too powerful." She snapped her gaze back to him. He held her stare without flinching, a steady weight in the shifting morning light. "People don't try to erase the weak," he added. "They try to erase the ones who stand in their way." Rose's lips parted slightly, not in shock but something more complicated, something she refused to name. "You're overstepping again," she said quietly. Or maybe you're hearing the truth for the first time, Alex replied. She turned away again, jaw tight, and for a long moment, neither spoke. A woodpecker tapped in the distance. The river hissed as it clashed against the bank. The campsite felt strangely small, too small for both the silence and the tension threading between them. Finally, Alex broke it. We should pack up. Conditions are changing. The river's too active. You'll be safer back in the truck. That word safer hit a nerve she didn't want exposed. I don't need to be kept safe, Alex. I'm not a child. I know you aren't, he said, picking up her backpack to dry near the fire. But someone wants you off balance. Her heart lurched, though she masked it with a scoff. Someone? Rose, he said simply. You're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar firm under federal investigation. There are only a handful of people who benefit if you fall, and one man who's suddenly too clean. She didn't have to ask who he meant. Charles Denton, her CFO. A man who smiled too politely, who shook hands too softly, who always appeared helpful, always carried numbers prepared before she even asked. Too prepared, too polished, too perfect. She swallowed tightly. You're guessing. No, Alex said. I'm observing. Rose sat down slowly on a nearby folding chair, her legs finally giving out from the cold and the weight of his words. She stared at the fire, its light flickering across her expression, softening what the world usually saw as unbreakable. Do you think the river accident wasn't an accident? Alex didn't answer immediately. He crouched to check her shoes, making sure the water hadn't soaked through. His touch was impersonal, efficient, but grounding. I think timing matters, he said softly, and timing was bad. He stood, meeting her eyes. Too bad to ignore. She felt a tremor of vulnerability shiver through her, and this time she didn't hide it quickly enough. Alex noticed, but, to his credit, said nothing. Behind them, the sound of leaves shifting caught his attention. He straightened instantly. Stay here. Alex. He moved before she could finish, disappearing into the trees with the silent precision of someone trained for darkness. Rose stayed rooted where she was, breath tight in her throat. She hated waiting, hated feeling powerless, hated knowing she was relying on someone she had just told, don't cross the line. Minutes stretched 5, then 7. Finally, Alex emerged from the trees holding something in his hand, a crushed water bottle, not theirs. Someone was here, he said, recently. Rose's heartbeat stumbled. A hiker? Maybe. His tone suggested he didn't believe it. Either way, we leave within the hour. She stood, drawing the jacket tighter around her. Fine, she said. We'll leave. Alex nodded once, then added, and when we get back to New York, you need to tell me everything. No more half-truths. She looked away. I don't owe you that. You do if you want me to keep you alive. The bluntness of it landed like a stone. Rose swallowed hard, her pride and fear colliding in her chest. Pack the truck, she finally said. We returned to the city. Alex studied her for a moment longer before answering, Yes, ma'am. Rose turned back toward the river, staring at the rushing current that had humiliated her only an hour earlier. Now it felt different, less like an accident, more like a warning. She whispered under her breath, barely audible even to herself, Whatever is happening, it started before I came here. And in the cracking firelight behind her, Alex Reed silently agreed. The truck rumbled steadily along the narrow Colorado road as the forest thinned and sunlight began breaking through the early morning fog. Rose sat rigid in the passenger seat, arms crossed, the collar of Alex's jacket still pulled up around her neck. She hated that she hadn't given it back yet, hated even more that she needed it. Colorado rolled past in streaks of gold and green, the landscape widening into open highway, but Rose's mind felt anything but open. It churned, restless and sharp, with questions she'd spent months avoiding. She tried to focus on the passing scenery, on the early autumn colors painting the hillsides, but her mind always dragged her back to the numbers, those damning numbers she hadn't been able to explain. Alex kept his focus on the road, hands steady on the wheel. His presence filled the truck cab with a calm that grated on Rose precisely because she needed it. She glanced at him, noting the squared shoulders, the jaw that rarely gave away what he was thinking. You're quiet, she said finally. Alex didn't look over. Driving. That's not an answer. It's the one I have right now. She narrowed her eyes. You think I can't handle the truth? No, Alex replied. I think you don't want to hear it." Her breath hitched, barely noticeable but noticeable enough for him. His knuckles tightened slightly on the wheel. "Rose," he said in a tone soft but unyielding, "when we get back to New York, whoever's after you isn't going to let up. I already know that. Do you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. She turned toward the window, irritated at both him and herself. "You're reading too much into a few footprints and a stupid river accident," she said. "Accidents happen. Not usually to CEOs under federal investigation," Alex countered calmly. "Not on a weekend when no one knows their location." Rose's jaw locked. She didn't want him to be right. She didn't want any of this. But she also couldn't deny the knot forming in her stomach. "You should stay in your place," she muttered, though the words carried far less force than before. "Doing my job sometimes means stepping outside that place," Alex replied, "especially when someone's trying to push you." A long silence followed. The road curved into a quiet overlook, giving them a view of the valley blanketed in morning light. The sight, beautiful and still, momentarily softened something in Rose, something she hadn't allowed to surface in years. Her voice lowered. "Do you think I did it?" Alex blinked once. It was the only indication he hadn't expected the question. "Stole the money?" she pressed, the words edged with a pain she hadn't intended to reveal. "Is that what you think?" "If I thought you did it," he said, "I wouldn't be here." She studied him carefully, searching for any sign of pity or diplomacy. She found none, just sincerity. It shook her more than she expected. "I don't need you believing in me," she said quietly. "Then it's a good thing that I don't work on belief," he replied. "I work on facts, and one fact is clear. Someone wants you blamed." Her heart tightened. "That someone is Denton," she said before she could stop herself. Speaking his name aloud felt dangerous, like touching a bruise she'd trained herself to ignore. "He's been too prepared, too perfect, too clean." "Clean people don't stay clean forever," Alex said. "Eventually the dirt shows." She looked away, unsettled by how much she wanted that to be true. The truck neared the highway junction leading toward Denver. Traffic thickened, the world pulling them back toward civilization, toward the responsibilities she had tried and failed to escape. Rose's phone buzzed. She checked the screen. A headline flashed across it. "Hale Capital Scandal Widens. CEO Unavailable for Comment." Her stomach dropped. "Turn it off," Alex said gently. "It doesn't help." She shoved the phone into her bag, but the words lingered in her mind, loud and accusing. She hated how the world loved watching the mighty fall. She hated how they wanted to see if she'd break. And she hated that a part of her feared she might. "We shouldn't go straight to headquarters," Alex said after a moment. "Not yet. I need to face them," she said sharply. "Running only makes me look guilty. Walking into a trap makes you look dead." The bluntness hit her like cold wind. "We're going to your penthouse first," he continued. "Secure location, controlled access. That's where we'll talk." Rose bit the inside of her cheek. "Talk," she repeated, almost scoffing. "You make it sound like I'm hiding something." "Are you?" She stiffened. "I don't hide from the truth. You hide from people," Alex corrected. "That's different." The word struck too close, too true. She turned away again, staring at the passing fields until the road narrowed and the first signs of Denver appeared: billboards, distant traffic, the skyline peeking through the haze. This was her world, the place where she'd built everything, the place where everything was now unraveling. "You really think Denton is behind this?" she asked quietly. Alex's voice hardened. "I think Denton wants your chair, and he knows he can't take it unless you fall, hard." Rose absorbed the words in silence. She remembered Denton's careful smiles, the way he always complimented her decisions, the way he'd remind her of deadlines she already knew. Polished, polite, predictably helpful, too helpful. A shiver crept up her spine. "If he's doing this," she whispered, "why me?" Alex didn't hesitate. "Because you're the only one strong enough to threaten him, and because he thinks you won't see it coming." She inhaled sharply, wounded by how plausible that sounded. "I'm not blind." "No," Alex said softly, "just alone." The honesty of it cracked something deep inside her. She swallowed hard. "That's enough," she whispered. "We'll be in New York soon." Alex nodded once, then added quietly, "And when we get there, everything changes." Rose didn't respond. She just watched the road ahead as the city drew closer. unaware that this would be the last calm moment she'd get for a very long time. Alex pulled the truck into the underground garage of Rose's Manhattan penthouse just after dusk, the city lights rising around them like a restless, glittering tide. Manhattan had a way of swallowing people. Whole Rose had always believed herself to be one of the few who could hold her ground in it. But as she stepped out of the truck, still wrapped in Alex's jacket because she had forgotten she still wore it, she felt the city pressing into her ribs with unwelcome familiarity. Alex scanned the garage with practiced precision. No unusual cars, no movement, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of traffic above, like the city breathing. He walked ahead of her, checking blind corners, then signaled when the private elevator area was clear. Only then did she move forward. It irritated her how relieved she felt knowing he was there. The elevator doors slid open, and the two stepped inside. The ascent was silent at first, filled only with the low buzz of machinery and Rose's heartbeat pulsing like a quiet drum in her ears. Finally, she spoke. "I don't need a babysitter." "Good," Alex said without looking at her. "I'm not one." The elevator chimed softly, and the doors opened to her private foyer, dark marble floors, minimalist wall sconces, curated art that had cost more than most people made in a year. Home, yet suddenly foreign. Alex stepped in first, sweeping the space with his eyes. "No signs of forced entry," he said. "Alarms are intact." Rose exhaled. "Of course they are. No one breaks into a building with this level of security." Alex didn't answer. Instead, he moved through the living room, checking windows, corners, shadows. Rose stood in the center of the room, watching him, reminding herself not to say thank you. When he finished the sweep, he nodded. "You're clear." Something in her loosened. Just a little. She walked toward the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and then set it down untouched. The quiet of the penthouse was suffocating. Most people longed for silence. Rose had learned that silence was where all the thoughts she tried to bury came out to greet her. Alex joined her in the kitchen doorway, leaning lightly against the frame. "You said you wanted facts," he said. "Let's start with that." She didn't turn around. "What facts do you think I'm hiding?" "Not hiding," he corrected. "Avoiding." She spun to face him, irritation flaring. "I'm not avoiding anything. You're avoiding what you know about Denton." She froze. Just a fraction of a second, but Alex caught it. He always caught the things she didn't want seen. She crossed her arms, bracing herself. "Charles is polished," she said. "He knows how to play the room, but I don't accuse people without proof." "And he's counting on that," Alex said. Rose let out a slow breath. Her shoulders fell slightly, as if the weight she'd been pretending not to carry finally pushed down a little harder. "Alex, this company has been my life. My father built the foundation, and I built everything on top of it. Every expansion, every acquisition, every investor we pulled from the brink. Hale Capital exists because I refused to let it fall." Alex stepped forward, voice lowered. "And Denton knows that. He knows your loyalty is your weakness." She flinched not outwardly, but deep, like a bruise touched too soon. "My loyalty is not a weakness." "It is," Alex said, softer now, "when the people you're loyal to don't deserve it." She wanted to argue, wanted to dismiss him as overstepping again, but the words caught in her throat. So instead she turned away, walking toward the windows that overlooked the city. Lights flickered like tiny stars, scattered across concrete constellations. "I trusted him," she said quietly. "Maybe not as a friend, but as a colleague, an intelligent one, someone who understood numbers the way some people understand people. Trust always has a price," Alex reminded gently. Her chest tightened at hearing her own words thrown back at her. "And Denton found a way to make you pay it." She stared out at Manhattan, her reflection faint in the glass hair still unruly from the river, skin pale from the cold and exhaustion, eyes shadowed with months of suspicion she refused to acknowledge. "I knew something was off," she admitted. He was too prepared during the first audit meeting. He anticipated every question, every shift, every missing number. Alex nodded. "Because he created the numbers." "You don't know that," she snapped, spinning toward him. Alex held her gaze, steady and unshaken. "You do." The room stilled. The city outside seemed to hush, as if eavesdropping. Rose's breath trembled once before she steadied it with force. "Say I suspected him," she said. "What then? What could I have done? Accuse my CFO with no evidence?" Hand him exactly what he needed to paint me as unstable? Or, Alex said, taking another step closer, you could have asked for help. Her lips parted, offended and wounded all at once. I don't ask for help. I know, he murmured. A pause stretched between them, tight, thin, fragile. Rose looked down, fingers curling slightly at her sides. I've let alone my entire life, she whispered, more to herself than to him. People follow strength. They don't follow doubt. Alex's voice softened. Strength doesn't mean isolation. She shook her head. Yes, it does. In my position, it does. Her late husband's betrayal flashed briefly through her mind, his smile, his lies, the way he'd hollowed her trust from the inside out. She pushed the memory away with practiced discipline. Alex seemed to sense the shift in her energy. Who else knows about the irregularities? He asked. Rose hesitated. 3 board members, maybe 4. And Denton? He knows everything, she said bitterly. He always does. Alex straightened. Then he knows you're close to seeing the truth. She felt a cold ripple at the base of her spine, an instinctual reaction, a warning she had never learned to ignore. What are you saying? I'm saying, Alex said quietly, that the river wasn't the first move, and it won't be the last. Rose took a slow breath. If that's true, then we need evidence. Real evidence. Something solid enough to take to the federal investigators. We'll get it. We. She repeated the word as if testing its shape. It felt foreign in her mouth. She looked at him, really looked. At the man who had pulled her from the river, who had stood between her and danger without hesitation, who kept telling her truths she didn't want to hear but desperately needed. For the first time, she didn't reject the idea. Why are you helping me? She asked softly. Alex didn't blink. Because the world doesn't get better when good people fall. She felt something tremble inside her, a small crack in the armor she'd spent years perfecting. The firelight of their Colorado campsite flickered back to mind, his voice that night echoing in her memory. Strength isn't silence. Strength is knowing when to ask for help. She exhaled, slow and quiet. All right, she said, then help me. Alex nodded once. A promise without embellishment. They stood there for a moment longer, facing the city like 2 soldiers preparing for the same war, each carrying wounds the other could not see. But for the first time, Rose didn't feel quite as alone. And for the first time, Alex allowed himself to hope that she might let him stay at her side. By the time Rose stepped out of the black SUV in front of Hale Capital's Manhattan headquarters, the morning sky had turned a muted steel gray, the kind that made the city feel colder than it was. The tall glass tower of her company loomed above her, familiar, commanding, and suddenly hostile. It was strange how a place she'd built from the foundation up could feel like foreign territory in a matter of weeks. Alex scanned the street before she moved. 2 reporters across the plaza, he murmured. 3 more by the corner, cameras not raised yet, but waiting. Rose adjusted the collar of her blazer, lifting her chin. Then they'll get bored. They haven't been bored in a month, Alex replied. She didn't answer. She climbed the steps toward the lobby, ignoring the heat of unwanted attention rising against her skin. Inside, the air smelled of polished marble and the faint citrus cleaner the janitorial staff preferred. Employees rushed between elevators, clutching coffees and tablets, but Rose noticed the shift, the subtle pull of silence whenever she passed. People who used to greet her now lowered their eyes, unsure whether to acknowledge her or avoid being associated with her. The saddest part was, she didn't blame them. Alex walked slightly behind her, observing everything. Conversations that paused too quickly, doors that closed too softly. A pair of analysts whispering near the glass wall of the conference room. Rose straightened her posture, forcing authority back into her bones. I want Denton in my office in 15 minutes, she said, stepping toward the private elevator. I'll schedule it, Alex answered. She arched an eyebrow. You're not my assistant. No, Alex said, but your assistant doesn't work on Sundays. She couldn't argue with that. They rode the executive elevator upward. The ascent felt longer than usual. Rose tapped her finger against her arm, a small, restless tick she hadn't let anyone see in years. Alex watched her quietly. When the doors opened, her office greeted her with its familiar view of the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood accents, a desk she'd sat behind while negotiating deals that saved entire companies. But even here, the air felt unsettled. A folder sat on her desk, placed too neatly, too deliberately. Alex reached it before she did. He didn't touch it. He just studied the angle, the way it sat perfectly centered. "Who has access to your office?" he asked. "Executive staff, maintenance, security. Anyone else?" "Denton," she said. The name tasted bitter. Alex nodded once, then finally opened the folder. Inside was a copy of the previous week's financial audit, a report she'd already read. But this version was different. Highlighted, annotated. Her initials forged at the bottom. Her stomach tightened. "He wants you to see this," Alex said quietly. "He wants you to think this is your mistake. My signature looks nothing like that. But the board won't analyze signatures." She swallowed the anger rising from her chest. "This is amateur," she said. "Sloppy. Sloppy gets people in trouble," Alex replied. "Sloppy is enough to ruin reputations." Her jaw clenched. "Not mine." Alex didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. A soft knock sounded at the door. A nervous young accountant poked her head in. "Miss Hale? The board meeting is convening early. They asked if you could join." Rose exchanged a brief look with Alex. Early meetings were never good. "I'll be there in 5, she said. The accountant disappeared. Alex waited until the door was shut. "You don't have to do this alone." "I do," Rose said sharply. "It's my company." "It's your battlefield," Alex corrected. "But you shouldn't walk into an ambush without backup." She almost snapped at him, but something in her paused. She thought of the folder, the forged signature, the reporters outside, the footsteps in the Colorado woods, and the river. Always the river. Finally, she nodded once. Not agreement, acknowledgement. They made their way toward the boardroom. As they approached, Alex subtly guided her to the left, away from the glass wall, where shadows couldn't catch her image. He had become her shield, whether she liked it or not. Through the frosted window, Rose saw silhouettes, 6 board members already seated, heads bowed together, discussing something with urgency. Denton stood near the front, posture perfectly aligned, like a man giving a sermon. When he saw her enter, his smile widened, too polished, too prepared. "Rose," he said, voice warm, almost paternal. "We've been trying to reach you." She stepped forward, composed. "I had personal matters to address." "Ah," Denton said smoothly. "We read about your trip. Much needed, I'm sure." Her eyes narrowed. He'd seen the headlines before she had. He was counting on them. The meeting unfolded like a carefully choreographed attack. Denton spoke softly, graciously, presenting numbers with the same elegant precision he always used. Only this time, the narrative was clear. Mistakes had been made, oversight was necessary, and for the sake of the company's reputation, transparency was required, including reviewing Rose's authority. He didn't accuse her outright, that would be too crude. Instead, he framed everything as concern, as responsibility, as protection. Alex stood silently at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching every detail. Because he saw the truth Rose couldn't afford to react to. Denton wasn't trying to share blame. He was trying to bury her under it. At one point, an older board member, James Lawton, a man she once trusted, said gently, "Rose, perhaps stepping aside temporarily would help your case. Public perception matters." Her chest tightened. "I'm not stepping aside." Denton cleared his throat softly. "We simply want what's best for the firm, for all of us. And given the irregularities you prepared," Rose snapped before she could stop herself. Silence cracked across the room. Denton's expression barely shifted, a flick of an eyelid, a tightening at the corner of his mouth. "If you believe there has been a misunderstanding," he said softly, "then we should address it together. Perhaps after the audit team finishes their next review." Rose heard the trap, loud and clear. Agreeing meant validating the narrative that she was confused, emotional, or unstable. Declining meant she seemed defensive. Either way, she lost ground. She inhaled slowly, regaining control. "I'll review everything with my legal team," she said. "Until then, no one touches my office or my files." Denton bowed his head. Of course. But everyone in the room knew he would. When the meeting finally adjourned, Rose stepped out, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her like a vice. Alex followed her, keeping pace. "He's tightening the net," Alex said. "He wants you cornered." "I noticed." "Then we move fast," he continued. "We gather evidence, not suspicions. Proof." She looked up at him, anger and resolve burning beneath her exhaustion. "Then let's begin." Alex gave a single nod. "I'll start with your security logs. You start with your audit trail." They stood there, shoulders squared against the incoming storm. And for the first time since the river, Rose felt something startling, a spark of fight, sharp and necessary. Justice wasn't always fair, but she would make sure it was loud. The elevator doors closed behind Rose and Alex as they descended from the boardroom floor, the fluorescent lights above flickering slightly, a subtle tremor in a building that had always felt unshakable. Rose gripped the slim metal railing inside the elevator, her knuckles whitening as she replayed the meeting in her mind. Denton's calm tone, the careful phrasing, the forged signature sitting in her office like a ticking bomb. For years, she had mastered silence, used it as armor, as weapon, as refuge. But today it felt like something else, a trap. "He's too confident," Rose said finally, her voice low. Alex kept his eyes on the floor indicator. "Confidence means he thinks he's ahead of us. He shouldn't be." "He shouldn't," Alex agreed, "but he is." The elevator opened into the nearly empty executive corridor. It was Sunday. Only essential staff were present. The absence of chatter made every detail more noticeable. The creak of vents, the soft click of distant keyboards, the hum of recessed lighting, the faint smell of industrial coffee drifting from the break room. Rose walked quickly, heels clicking sharply. Alex stayed close behind, scanning corners, doorways, shadows. She reached her office and unlocked the door, stepping inside with purpose. "We need to know when that folder was placed on my desk," she said, heading straight for the computer. "And by whom?" Alex didn't waste breath responding. He went directly to the small security panel tucked behind a discreet cabinet. Hale Capital prided itself on its digital defenses, but Alex knew physical weaknesses could reveal more. He plugged in a small device, its screen lighting with access points. "Security logs for your floor," he said. 2 weeks' worth. Rose frowned. "You had access to that?" "I do now." She didn't ask how. She suspected she wouldn't want to know. While Alex sifted through timestamps, Rose pulled up the audit software. Her eyes narrowed as spreadsheets loaded columns of numbers she knew better than her own pulse. She'd built Hale Capital's financial system. She'd fought tooth and nail for transparency and structure. Her reputation rested on the fact that she didn't miss things, unless someone made sure she did. She zoomed in on expense sheets. Small inconsistencies popped up like flickers of static. Nothing huge, nothing flashy, but everything was off. 0.5% discrepancies. Adjusted entries that shouldn't have been adjusted. Notes that didn't match the protocol. A chill crept through her. It was subtle, quiet, and that was what terrified her. Denton hadn't made her look incompetent with one move. He'd made her look careless over time, like she'd been failing slowly, invisibly. Alex's voice cut through her spiral. "You had 12 unauthorized entries into your office over the last month." Rose's jaw tightened. "Who?" "Maintenance," Alex said flatly. "Supposedly." "Supposedly. Maintenance doesn't come on Sunday mornings, yet someone did 3 times. Rose felt heat rise under her skin. "Denton has access to authorize maintenance." "He does," Alex said. "And the access logs for his office show he was here all 3 of those days." She swallowed hard, fury mixing with fear. "What about cameras?" He shook his head. "Footage deleted." Rose spun in her chair. "Deleted? 2 weeks missing from the feed." "Only for this floor." Her breath caught. "Alex, that means he's confident enough to tamper with our own security. Or desperate enough," Alex said. "Sometimes confidence is just the mask someone wears when they know their time is running out." Rose considered that. Denton had always seemed like a man in perfect control, smoothly dressed, soft-spoken, gracious. The sort of man who smiled while tightening the knife. But desperation? She hadn't allowed herself to consider that. Not until now. Alex stepped away from the panel and moved closer to her desk, studying her expression. "He's escalating." She nodded, throat tight. "And he expects me to fall quietly. People like Denton always underestimate the strong." She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I don't feel strong right now." "You're still standing," Alex said. "That's strength." Something in the way he said it quiet, steady, without the slightest hint of admiration or pity cut through her defenses in a way nothing else had. Before she could respond, a notification pinged softly on her screen. An internal message. Sent anonymously. She clicked it before thinking twice. A single line appeared. Check your storage room. Her heart lurched. Alex. He was already moving. On it. They crossed the office in quick, silent strides. The storage room was small, tucked behind a frosted glass door. Rose's hand shook slightly as she touched the keypad. The lock clicked open. Alex pushed the door in first, stepping inside. Files lined the shelves, organized, neat, undisturbed. At least, that's how it appeared. Alex scanned the room, then paused. There. His voice was low, controlled. He pointed to a small metal lockbox tucked behind a stack of archived budget reports. It wasn't hers. Stay back, Alex said, kneeling beside it. He inspected the surface. No fingerprints. No markings. No dust. Recently placed. Can you open it? Rose asked. Should I call security? No. Alex pulled a small tool from his jacket. 2 quick movements. The lock clicked. He opened the lid. Rose felt her breath freeze. Inside were printed copies of wire transfers, dozens of them redirecting funds from Hale Capital's secondary investment pools into shell accounts, each one stamped with fraudulent initials, each one pointing directly at her. He planted these, she whispered, voice cracking. Alex didn't flinch. This box wasn't meant for you to find today. Then why leave it where I could find it? Because someone sent you the message, Alex said. Someone Denton didn't expect. Rose stared at the papers, her pulse pounding in her throat. It was a masterpiece of deception, clean, subtle, devastating. Enough to destroy her career if the board received it in the right frame. Enough to make the federal investigators question her intentions. Enough to ruin everything. Her hands trembled. This is it, she whispered. This is the move he's been planning. Alex closed the lid slowly. Then we stay ahead of him. She looked up at him, eyes burning not with tears but with fire. How? By doing what you do best, he said. Seeing what others miss. A heavy silence hung between them, broken only by the distant hum of the building's HVAC. Finally, Rose straightened her spine. Get me everything you can from Denton's access logs. His email backups, his authorization trails. If he left fingerprints, we'll find them. Alex nodded. I'll start immediately. Rose lifted the forged documents in her hand. They felt heavier than paper, like chains. He wants a war, she said quietly. Then he'll have one, Alex replied. And as the city lights began to glow against the Manhattan sky, Rose Hale finally understood that the river had been the beginning, not the threat itself, but the message, you're vulnerable. Now she was done being vulnerable. Now she was ready to fight. Night settled heavily over Manhattan, pressing against the glass walls of Hale Capital like a dark tide. The city below flickered with restless movement horns, headlights, 1,000 quiet stories unfolding in the grid. But inside Rose Hale's office, the world had narrowed to 2 people and a lockbox full of lies. Alex stood by the window, his silhouette framed against the skyline. He had already scanned the lockbox for prints twice, photographed every document, cataloged every page. Everything pointed to Denton, but the evidence was crafted too well to be traced directly. It was damning and useless. Rose paced the length of her office, the forged reports clenched in her hand. This isn't carelessness, she said. He wants me to find these. He wants me to feel the walls closing in. Alex didn't disagree. Psychological pressure. It pushes people to make mistakes. I don't make mistakes. He's counting on you to believe that, Alex replied. Until the moment you finally do. She stopped pacing, breathing hard. The weight of the company, the investigation, the betrayal, it pressed down on her shoulders. She'd carried far heavier burdens, but this time she felt them differently. More personally, more painfully. Denton wasn't just after her position. He was after her legacy. We need something he can't bury, she said. Something he can't forge. Then we find the original financial trail, Alex replied. The one he manipulated. Rose's lips tightened. It'll be hidden deep. Then we'll dig deep. She hesitated. What if he's covered every track? Alex turned from the window and met her eyes. People like Denton don't cover everything. They leave a thread, a mistake born of ego. He thinks he's smarter than everyone. Rose didn't say anything at first, but a small, humorless smile touched her mouth. He thinks he's smarter than me. He isn't, Alex said, but he has the advantage of surprise. She looked away, trying to quiet the internal tremor that refused to settle. Vulnerability was not a language she spoke willingly. She was built on precision and discipline traits that didn't protect her from sabotage, but had always protected her from herself. Alex approached the desk. "Let's start with the accounts Denton didn't think you'd check." "He thinks I check everything." "Exactly," Alex said. "Which means he hid the truth somewhere you wouldn't expect." Rose considered that. Hale Capital had more accounts than any one person could monitor at once, though she came closer than most. But there were areas delegated to specific departments, areas Denton oversaw. "The secondary investment pools," she murmured. "He always said those were self-regulated." "Then that's where we start." She sat at her desk, pulling the financial dashboard back up. Alex stood behind her, not interfering, not crowding, just present, steady. Rose dove into the numbers, column after column. Year after year, she knew these patterns like the back of her hand. She could read numbers the way others read people, instinctively, deeply. And then she saw it, a pattern so quiet it could have been mistaken for normal variance. "Here," she said, highlighting a sequence of transfers. "These shouldn't be paired. How long has this been happening?" Alex asked. "Months," she said. Her pulse flickered. Longer, maybe. Slowly enough not to raise flags, but consistently enough that, "Yes, here." Her voice sharpened. "Every time we moved funds for green energy investments, a micro-transfer went out." Alex leaned in slightly. "Where?" "To a holding account," she said. "One that doesn't match any of our partners." "Show me," she clicked. The account opened a shell corporation registered to an address in Queens. A ghost. "Denton," Alex said. "Everything leads back to Denton." Rose knew it wasn't enough to prove anything yet, but she also knew they were closer than Denton wanted them to be. Before she could analyze further, Alex's posture shifted, a subtle stiffening. "What is it?" she asked. "Someone just entered the floor," he said quietly. "Two people." Rose froze. "Security?" "No." His voice dropped even lower. Footsteps too soft, too controlled. She stood, heart pounding, as Alex motioned her away from the door. "Stay behind me." "Alex, stay." His tone brooked no argument. She listened. For once, she didn't fight him. Footsteps approached down the hall, slow, deliberate, muffled by the carpet but unmistakably purposeful. They stopped outside her office. Rose held her breath. Alex's stance changed, his center of gravity lowering, ready for impact. A shadow passed under the door. A hand touched the handle, and then silence. A long, suffocating silence. Whoever it was didn't enter. A moment later, the footsteps retreated, disappearing down the hall. Rose exhaled shakily. "They were watching," Alex said, "but not ready to move." "What were they looking for?" "To see if you were here," Alex replied. "Or if you were alone." Rose ran a hand through her hair, trying to calm her accelerating pulse. "If Denton sent them, then Denton knows we're getting close." Alex walked to the door, checked the hallway, then locked it. "We need to leave. Now." "We haven't finished," she protested. "We will," he said, "but not here." She gathered the papers she needed, the Shell account records, the forged transfers, and stuffed them into a secure folder. Alex unplugged his device, pocketing it. They moved quickly but silently through the dim corridor. As they reached the elevator, Rose hesitated. "Alex, whoever that was, they didn't try to hurt me. Not yet." "Why?" "Because Denton doesn't want you gone," Alex said. "Not physically, not until you've crashed publicly. He wants the fall, not the funeral." She swallowed hard, sickened by how accurate that felt. The elevator opened, and they stepped inside. Rose stood rigidly, fingers gripping the folder so tightly the paper crinkled under her palms. Alex watched her carefully. "This isn't the end," he said. She looked up at him, eyes sharp with anger and something else resolve. "No," she said. "It's the beginning." The elevator descended toward the lobby, and in the faint reflection of the stainless steel door, she saw herself not defeated, not breaking, but ignited. A woman stripped of illusions, a leader pushed to the edge, a fighter rising again, and she knew without question that Denton had underestimated her for the last time. The sun had already dipped behind the Manhattan skyline by the time Rose and Alex reached the underground lot and stepped into the cool evening air. Alex drove without speaking, weaving through traffic with controlled precision. Rose sat in silence beside him, her fingers tapping an uneven rhythm against the secure folder resting on her lap. New York's nightlights flashed across her face, streaks of white, amber, and red that made her look both battle-worn and unbreakable. She wasn't unbreakable anymore, not since she'd seen the lockbox, not since she'd realized someone had been in her office, watching, waiting. Alex finally broke the silence. "There's someone in Denver I trust," he said. "A former military intelligence analyst. He can verify the financial trails. He can tell us exactly how the shell accounts were set up." "Denver?" Rose echoed. "Why not someone here?" "Because everyone here is too close to Denton," Alex said. "He has reach in this city, more than you think." She hated that he was right. Denver is safer. "For you," Alex said. "For the evidence." Rose looked down at the folder, tracing the edge of the forged documents. A dozen paths of sabotage, a dozen fingerprints pointing only to her. "If you trust this man," she said quietly, "then go." Alex nodded once. "I'll leave tonight." The words hit her harder than she expected. She tried to hide her reaction, but her inhale was sharper, quicker than it should have been. "You think it's safe for you to travel alone, with this evidence?" "I'll move carefully." "Careful isn't always enough," Rose said, her voice thinner than she intended. Alex didn't smile, but something softened in his expression. "I've handled worse." "That doesn't reassure me." "It wasn't meant to," he said gently. "It's just the truth." They reached her penthouse building. Alex parked, then walked her inside, sweeping the lobby with his eyes, even though the staff already nodded respectfully at the sight of him. Inside the quiet elevator, Rose finally asked the question she had been avoiding. What if this doesn't work? What if your friend can't trace anything?" Alex didn't hesitate. "Then we'll find another way." "You make it sound simple." "It won't be," Alex replied. "But you're not alone anymore." She didn't look at him, but she felt something shift in her chest, an old wound pulling, an old instinct resisting. When the elevator reached her floor, she stepped out first but stopped before the door fully closed behind him. "Alex," she said softly. He paused. She swallowed. "Be careful." He gave a slow nod, the kind men give when words aren't enough. Then he left. Hours later, Rose stood in the penthouse window, watching the city pulse below her. Her mind spun through numbers, signatures, meetings, subtle glances from board members, moments she had ignored in the name of professionalism and pride. She stayed there until her phone buzzed. A message from Alex. "Boarding now. Will update when I land in Denver." She stared at those words longer than necessary. A strange heaviness settled in her ribs, something like dread threaded with trust, an unstable mix she hadn't felt for anyone in years. She typed back, "Don't take unnecessary risks." She deleted it. Rewrote, "Keep me informed." Deleted it. Finally she sent, "Safe flight." His response was immediate. Always. Rose set the phone down, but sleep didn't come. Hours passed as Manhattan dimmed toward midnight, the city thinning but never fully sleeping. When she finally drifted into a shallow half-rest on the living room sofa, it wasn't peace that lulled her, it was exhaustion. By the time dawn broke, Alex was already in the air. When her phone buzzed, she jolted upright. Turbulence. Landing soon. Denver looks clear. She exhaled. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath since he left. She typed back, "Let me know when you meet him." She waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Her pulse quickened even though she told herself she wasn't worried. Not really. But when the phone finally vibrated again, her heart jumped. Met him. Reviewing the data now. If this holds, we have exactly what we need. Relief washed over her so sharply she had to sit down. She typed, "Good, keep me updated." There was no reply this time. Instead, the phone remained silent for the next 30 minutes. Then an hour. Then 2. Something cold and electric crawled up her spine. She called him. The line rang 4 times, then cut off without a voicemail option. She tried again. Same thing. She stood abruptly, pacing the room. Something was wrong. She could feel it not in logic, but in instinct. The same instinct that had warned her the river accident wasn't an accident. She called again. Nothing. She stared at the silent phone, panic beginning to claw at her composure. "Come on, Alex," she whispered. She didn't realize she was shaking until her hand brushed against the glass table and left a faint tremor. At exactly 10:42 a.m., her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered instantly. "Alex?" But it wasn't his voice. It was a stranger, breathless and hurried. Ma'am, is this Rose Hale? Her heart stopped. Yes. I found this phone on the side of Route 6. There was an accident, a black SUV. EMS already took the driver. Rose's knees buckled. She grabbed the counter. Is he alive? The man hesitated. They said he was conscious when they loaded him. Conscious. Loaded. These words barely reached her. The room around her blurred. Which hospital? She demanded. The stranger told her. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say anything. She was already moving. Shoes, coat, keys. She didn't think, she just acted. By the time she reached the elevator, her breath was shaking, her pulse wild. She stabbed the button repeatedly, muttering under her breath, "Please, please." When the doors finally closed, she pressed her fist against her mouth, fighting the surge of fear crashing inside her. She had spent years mastering every emotion, burying every vulnerability beneath layers of discipline. But in that elevator, in that breathless moment between floors, one truth broke through all her walls. I can survive losing my company. I cannot survive losing him. She didn't know when Alex Reed had become more than protection. She only knew that the world felt suddenly, terrifyingly fragile without him. And as the elevator descended, Rose Hale, who had never run toward anything except victory, found herself running toward the one person she could no longer imagine losing. The Denver hospital towered in front of Rose like a fortress of white concrete and glass, its revolving doors spinning with a pace that felt cruelly indifferent to the panic crushing her ribs. The air outside was thin and sharp in her lungs, the cold wind cutting across her cheeks as she rushed through the entrance. She moved fast, too fast for the receptionist to finish her greeting, and spoke in a voice tight with urgency. Alex Reed. He was brought in this morning. Car accident. The young receptionist blinked, startled. She turned to her monitor, typing quickly. Yes, he arrived about an hour ago. He's in trauma observation. They're still evaluating injuries. You can wait. But Rose was already moving. A security guard stepped into her path. Ma'am, you can't go back there without... Rose snapped her gaze toward him, eyes blazing with a force that froze him mid-sentence. I'm not asking permission. Something in her expression, something fierce and unraveling, made the guard hesitate just long enough for Rose to slip past. She pushed through swinging double doors and down a hallway that smelled of antiseptic and fluorescent lights. Nurses glanced up but didn't stop her. Urgency wrapped around her like a storm. Then she saw him. Through a half-open curtain, Alex lay on a hospital bed, the stiff white sheet pulled across his chest. His left temple was cut, a line of dried blood trailing toward his hairline. His arm was strapped in a stabilizer. Electrodes dotted his skin, but his chest rose and fell. He was alive. Rose's breath cracked with relief. So sudden and overwhelming, she had to place a hand against the wall to steady herself. She stepped inside the room quietly. He didn't see her at first. His eyes were half closed, hazy with pain medication. Still, he looked alert enough to register movement. You shouldn't be here, he murmured. His voice was rough, scraped, like gravel. You're supposed to be in New York, and you're supposed to answer your phone. Her voice shook, part fury, part fear, part something she refused to name. He swallowed, shifting slightly, wincing at the pain. Didn't have a chance, he muttered. Truck hit me from behind, forced me off the road. Rose's blood turned cold. That wasn't an accident. No, Alex said. It wasn't. Rose moved closer, her heels clicking softly against the tile. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to confirm he was real, but touching felt too intimate, too revealing, too dangerous. For her, not him. Did you see who it was? She asked. No plates, Alex said. Tinted windows. Denton, Rose breathed. He must have known you were bringing evidence to someone he didn't control. Alex didn't deny it. Instead, he studied her expression. Even injured, even tethered to monitors, his gaze was steady. You shouldn't have come, he said quietly. It's not safe. You don't get to say that to me, Rose replied, her voice low and trembling, not after lying unconscious on the side of a highway. A faint, strained flicker of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I wasn't unconscious. You weren't answering your phone. Imp took it. I thought... She stopped, breath catching painfully. She couldn't say the words. I thought I'd lost you. Instead, she inhaled shakily and looked away. I thought something happened, she managed. Something worse. Alex watched her with a focus that felt too knowing, too close. "Rose," he said gently, but she cut him off. "Don't do that. Don't talk to me like I'm fragile." "You're not fragile," Alex said. "You're shaken." She turned toward the window, unable to bear the weight of his gaze. "You were hit intentionally," she said. "And if they were willing to run you off the road, they're willing to do more." "Then they'll try again," Alex said simply. "That's how these things go." She spun back to him, anger sparking through fear. "You speak like death is just another box to check." "For me," he said, "it kind of is." The bluntness hit her like a slap. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Not for me." A small silence stretched between them. For the first time since she'd met him, Alex didn't have a quick answer. Instead, he let his eyes soften a look she'd never seen on him before, something caught between gratitude and warning. "I'll be fine in a few hours," he said. "Doc says nothing's broken except the arm. A concussion, maybe. I've had worse." "That doesn't make this acceptable." "No," he said quietly. "But it tells us Denton is scared." Rose processed that. "If he's escalating, we're out of time," she said. "We need the evidence your contact was verifying." "He got halfway through before the crash," Alex said. "Enough to confirm your instincts were right. The shell companies trace back to a consulting group Denton used 5 years ago. Same pattern, same method." Rose felt a surge, something like vindication, something like fury. "So Denton did it," she whispered. "He stole from us. And he's framing me." "Yes," Alex said. "But we still need irrefutable proof." Rose nodded. Then a hard thought struck her. "Alex, the evidence. Where is it?" His eyes darkened. "Storage compartment in the SUV. Locked case. EMS didn't touch it." "And the crash?" "SUV rolled. But the compartment should have stayed sealed." Rose exhaled shakily. "We need that case." "I'll get it," Alex said. "No," she snapped. "You're not leaving this bed." "Rose, you almost died today," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm not sending you back out there." He studied her carefully. "Then who will go?" She swallowed. Fear rose in her chest like a tide. Fear of betrayal, fear of Denton's reach, fear of losing everything, but most of all fear of losing the man lying in front of her. "I will," Rose said. Alex's eyes widened. "Absolutely not. I'm not asking permission. You don't have training. I don't need training to walk into an impound lot and retrieve a case. If it's a trap, then it's my trap to face." A quiet beat passed. Rose lowered her voice, barely above a whisper. "I won't risk your life again." Alex exhaled slowly, frustration battling with something deeper, something protective and fierce. "You shouldn't go alone." "Then tell me who I can trust." His silence answered for him. "No one." The realization steadied her. For once, the danger felt clarifying, not paralyzing. "I built an empire," she said. "I navigated boardrooms full of men who wanted me to fail. I survived a marriage that nearly broke me. I won't fall now." She reached for the secure folder at the foot of his bed and tucked it under her arm. "Rest," she said. "Recover. I'll bring the case." Alex looked at her, really looked, and for the first time fear flickered in his eyes. Not for himself, for her. "Rose," he said quietly, "be careful." She nodded once, turning toward the door. "I'll be back before you wake up." But Alex knew, and so did she, that the path ahead would be far more dangerous than either of them wanted to admit. And as Rose Hale stepped into the hallway, spine straight, fire lit behind her eyes, one thing was unmistakably clear. Denton had made his first attack. Now it was her turn. The winter sun was beginning to slip behind the Denver skyline when Rose stepped out of the hospital and into the biting wind. She pulled her coat tighter around her and squared her shoulders, grounding herself in the same discipline that had carried her through negotiations, acquisitions, and the relentless scrutiny of Wall Street. But this was different. This was survival. She crossed the parking lot briskly, each step echoing with a single, steady truth. Alex had nearly died because he was helping her, and Denton wasn't finished. Not even close. She reached the rented SUV, a silver crossover Alex had secured, before flying out and climbed in. The interior still smelled faintly of leather and pine-scented cleaner. For a moment, she sat with her hands on the steering wheel, breathing deeply. The GPS was already set to the impound facility where Alex's wrecked vehicle had been taken. She turned the key. The engine hummed to life. "Just retrieve the case," she whispered to herself, in and out. But even as she said it, She could hear Alex's voice in her mind. It might be a trap. She drove anyway. The city lights thickened as she left the hospital district and headed toward the industrial outskirts, a grid of warehouses, salvage yards, and chain-link fences topped with coiled razor wire. The impound lot came into view, a massive fenced compound with rows of damaged vehicles behind tall floodlights. A small booth at the entrance glowed with a dull yellow light. Rose parked and approached the booth. A middle-aged attendant in a mechanic's jacket slid the window open, chewing something that might have been gum or tobacco. "Evenin'. You here for a release?" Rose steadied her voice. "Vehicle brought in today. Black SUV. Highway damage. I'm here to retrieve a locked case from the storage compartment. The driver is hospitalized." The attendant squinted at her, then at his computer. "Insurance?" "On file," Rose said. "His name is Alex Reed." The man typed slowly, clicking through screens. Rose tapped her thumb against her palm, a restless motion she couldn't contain. Finally, the attendant nodded. "SUVs in row F, clearance hasn't gone through, so you can't take the car. But you can retrieve personal items. That's all I need." The man stepped out and unlocked the gate. "Stay on the main path. Lots of debris." Rose nodded and moved quickly through the maze of wrecked vehicles. The air smelled of rust, oil, and cold metal. The rows stretched like a graveyard of twisted frames and shattered glass. She found the SUV easily. It was one of the few recent arrivals, its black bodywork scraped raw, one side crushed inward. Her chest tightened. Alex had been inside that, alive, barely. She approached the driver's side, the door hanging crooked, and knelt to inspect the lower panel. The storage compartment was still intact miraculously. She pressed the latch. It stuck. She tried again. This time it opened with a click, revealing the black steel case inside, untouched. Relief washed over her so strong she had to exhale shakily. Carefully, she pulled the case out. It was heavier than she expected. Solid, important. She stood, gripping it firmly, her pulse finally beginning to settle until she heard a sound behind her. Gravel crunching, slow, deliberate. Rose froze. She turned. A man in a dark jacket stood at the end of the row. Not a mechanic, not a police officer, not a curious bystander. He didn't speak. He didn't move closer. He just watched her. Then another man stepped into view behind him. Her heart dropped. Alex's voice echoed in her mind. "They were looking to see if you were alone." She was. The first man took one step forward. "Miss Hale," he said calmly. Her stomach clenched. "You need to come with us." Rose backed away. "I'm not going anywhere." "We're not here to hurt you," the man said. "But you have something our employer needs." She tightened her grip on the case. "Tell Denton he can come get it himself." The man smiled, an unsettling, pitying smile. "He assumed you'd say that." The second man moved slightly, blocking the path. Rose looked left. A third silhouette appeared at the far end of the row. They were closing in. Her breath quickened. She scanned the SUV wrecked, useless, no improvised weapon, no escape route, except the narrow gap between the vehicles. She tightened her jaw. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice low, controlled. "If any of you touch me, the police will—" "Ma'am," the first man cut in gently, "no one will touch you, unless you make this difficult." That was all she needed to hear. Rose ran. She didn't think she sprinted between the vehicles, her heels slipping on loose gravel, the case heavy in her hand but not heavy enough to slow her. Shouts erupted behind her. Footsteps pounded. "Miss Hale." She didn't look back. She darted between a pickup and a crushed Buick, scraping her arm against cold metal. Her breath tore at her throat. Tire rims clattered as someone tripped behind her. She kept going. The floodlights cast harsh beams across her path, leaving pockets of darkness she used like cover. She reached the end of row E, veered sharply, then ducked behind a stack of junked sedans. She crouched, pressing the steel case against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Footsteps scattered across the gravel. She went this way, checked the south fence, spread out she can't leave the lot. Rose squeezed her eyes shut for half a second. She had survived Wall Street. She had survived scandal. She had survived a marriage that left scars deeper than any injury she could name. She would survive this. She waited until the footsteps drifted toward the far aisles, then crept out from behind the sedans and sprinted toward the far corner of the lot toward the chain-link fence. A locked gate was there. Her only chance. She reached it and froze again. The same man from before stood on the other side, illuminated by the glow of the booth light. This time he wasn't smiling. "Miss Hale," he said. "Stop." Rose's pulse roared in her ears. She tightened her grip on the case, every instinct screaming at her to run, but there was nowhere left to go. For a moment, despair pressed at her edges. Then she remembered Alex broken, bloodied, fighting to stay conscious. He'd told her the truth. Denton wouldn't kill her, not yet, not until he got what he wanted. That gave her leverage. That gave her time. She lifted her chin, hiding her fear behind the calm she had perfected over decades. "If Denton wants this case," she said, "he'll have to look me in the eye." The man took 2 slow steps toward her. "Miss Hale." Rose hurled the case upward, not away, straight at his face. He flinched instinctively. In that half-second of reflexive blindness, she spun and bolted toward the booth, the only place with people, with witnesses, with lights. Shouts erupted, feet thundered. But Rose had always been faster than people believed. She burst into the booth just as the attendant looked up, startled. "Lock the door," she gasped. "Now." The attendant blinked, confused. Then he saw the men running toward them. His hand flew to the switch. The lock clicked. Rose collapsed against the wall, breath shaking, body trembling with adrenaline and terror and defiance. Outside, the men slowed. They didn't try the door. They didn't shout. They simply watched her through the glass, expressionless, calculating before silently walking away into the maze of wrecked cars. Rose slid to the floor, chest heaving. She had the evidence. She was alive. But for the first time, she understood the truth in her bones. Denton wasn't trying to ruin her anymore. He was trying to erase her, and she had just declared war. The flight back to Denver General felt longer than the drive to the impound lot. Rose sat in the back of the cab, clutching the steel case against her ribs, her fingers still trembling from the adrenaline that hadn't yet drained from her blood. The city blurred past the windows, traffic lights streaking into red and gold smears, headlights carving through the dusk, and every shadow seemed to watch her. The driver glanced at her through the mirror once or twice, perhaps sensing the tension radiating off her, but Rose kept her gaze fixed forward, jaw tight, eyes sharp with purpose. When the cab pulled up to the hospital entrance, she stepped out without waiting for the driver to finish speaking. She moved fast through the rotating doors, down the corridor, past the reception desk. Nurses in scrubs shifted aside instinctively, as if something about her urgency pushed the air ahead of her. The steel case grew heavier with each step. She didn't slow until she reached Alex's room. He was awake, propped against the raised hospital bed, arms still in the stabilizer, temples still bruised, eyes alert despite exhaustion. He looked up when she entered, and the moment he saw her face, his expression changed completely. Rose. It wasn't a greeting, it was a question, a warning, a fear. She closed the door behind her and pressed her back against it, gripping the case so tightly her knuckles whitened. For a long second, they only stared at each other, 2 people standing on the edge of the same hell, one of them bleeding and the other shaking. He broke the silence first. "You found it." His gaze flicked to the steel case. But something happened. Her breath hitched. She hadn't realized she was still breathing too fast. "Denton's men were there," she said quietly. Alex went still. "How many?" "3 that I saw, maybe more." He tried to sit up straighter, but pain pulled at his face. "Did they touch you?" "No," she said quickly. "Not physically." "Rose." "But they surrounded me." Her voice shook at the memory. "They knew who I was. They knew why I was there. They told me to come with them." Alex's jaw locked with a force that tightened every muscle in his neck. "And you ran." "I didn't run," she snapped, but then her voice softened, turned raw. "I survived." Something in him softened too. "You shouldn't have gone alone." "You weren't able to go," she said, "and I wasn't leaving you, or this." She lifted the case slightly. "This is what you nearly died for." Alex held her gaze for a long moment. Then he exhaled slowly. "Sit," he said. She sank into the chair beside his bed. He studied her like he was assessing injuries, except the wounds he saw were somewhere deeper, her shaken breaths, the tremor in her fingers, the way her eyes kept darting to the door as if expecting the men from the impound lot to appear. "You're scared," he said quietly. "I'm not." "Rose." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was no point pretending. "I thought they were going to take me," she whispered. "And I kept thinking if they do, no one will know where I went. You'll be here, hurt, and I won't." She broke off, unable to say the rest. Alex reached out with his uninjured hand and covered hers, gently, firmly, grounding her. She didn't pull away. "You're safe now," he said. "No," she whispered. "Safe isn't real anymore." Alex didn't argue. He let silence steady her breathing until her shoulders finally stopped shaking. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "We have enough evidence to tie Denton to shell accounts, but not enough to prove motive or intent." "We'll get there," Alex said. "Not if he kills both of us first," she replied. "He's escalating. He ran you off the road. He ambushed me. He's confident enough to get sloppy, dangerous enough to get bold. Bold men fall," Alex murmured. "Not without help." She unlocked the case. Inside, the documents were still arranged exactly as Alex had packed them: financial trails, metadata logs, cross-referenced entries. Alex leaned forward, scanning the first few pages. "This is clean," he said. "Clean enough to lead investigators straight to him if they see the full picture. But he'll bury them before they look," Rose replied. "He has influence with half the board. The rest are terrified of losing their seats." Alex looked up. "Then we bypass the board." She blinked. "What?" "If we can't go through the front door," he said, "we go through the side." She sat back, absorbing that. "Meaning federal investigators." "Meaning a specific one," Alex corrected. "You know her, Agent Lee Avery." Rose stiffened. "Avery hates me." "Avery hates corruption," Alex said. "And Denton is corruption wrapped in a silk tie." Rose considered it. Avery had been aggressive from the start, sharp questions, pointed remarks, an unyielding suspicion that Rose had always resented but secretly understood. "If we bring this to her," Rose said slowly, "she'll come for the whole company." "Yes," Alex said, "but she'll come for Denton first." A knock sounded. Rose jumped. Alex tensed immediately. The door opened before either of them could respond. An older nurse with a clipboard stepped inside. "Sorry, miss. Hale, visiting hours are—" She paused, noticing the tension. "Everything all right here?" "We're fine," Rose said, forcing calm into her voice. "Just talking." The nurse nodded, made a quick notation, and stepped back out. Rose waited until the latch clicked shut before she turned back to Alex. "If Denton knows I escaped that impound lot," she said, "he'll know I have the case." "He'll make his next move soon," Alex agreed. "Before we reach Avery." Rose drew in a slow breath. "Then we need to move tonight." "You're exhausted," he said. "You haven't slept since—" "I don't have time to sleep." "Rose." "Alex, he's coming." Her voice dropped. "And he's not going to wait for us to rest." Silence, heavy, true. Alex leaned back slightly, wincing at the pull in his ribs. "Then I'm coming with you. You're injured. I'm walking. You're concussed. I've had worse." "Alex." He met her eyes with a steadiness she recognized, defiance, born from loyalty. "You're not doing this alone." Her breath trembled. "I don't want to lose you," she said quietly. It slipped out before she could stop it, an unguarded truth in the dim hospital light. Alex held her gaze, and something in his expression changed, something soft, something fierce. "You won't," he said. "Not while I can stand beside you." For the first time all day, she let herself believe it. A small, sharp knock interrupted them again, more urgent this time. Rose and Alex exchanged a look. The door creaked open. A hospital security guard stepped inside, his voice low. "Miss Hale? Mr. Reed?" His eyes shifted nervously. "Someone's asking for you downstairs." Rose's heartbeat kicked hard against her ribs. "Who?" The guard swallowed. "Says his name is Charles Denton." For a moment, Rose couldn't move. The hospital room seemed to shrink around her, walls tightening, air thinning. Denton, here, in the building. The man who stole from her, framed her, hunted her through a scrapyard, and nearly killed Alex walking freely downstairs like a man checking in for a dental appointment. Alex reacted first. He pushed himself upright, swinging his legs off the bed despite the pain that flashed across his face. "You're not going down there alone," he said. "You can barely stand," Rose whispered. "I don't need to stand," Alex replied. "I just need to be between you and him." She moved to steady him on instinct, but he shook his head. "I'm fine." He wasn't, but she understood. Some men didn't fight for survival, they fought for loyalty. and Alex Reed's loyalty to her had become something she no longer dared to examine deeply. The guard waited near the door, shifting nervously. "He says he just wants to talk," the guard said quietly. "He's alone." Rose let out a soft, bitter breath. "He's never alone." Alex nodded. "Then we treat this like a confrontation, not a conversation." Together, they walked down the hallway, Alex slower, Rose steady but trembling inside. Her heels clicked against the tile, each step echoing like a countdown. When they reached the lobby, Rose saw him immediately. Charles Denton stood near the reception desk, hands folded politely, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most cars in the parking lot. His calm smile was a weapon, his stillness a threat. When he spotted Rose, his face brightened with manufactured warmth. "Rosalind," he said, as though greeting an old friend. "You look tired." "You look guilty," she replied. His smile only widened. "I'd like to clarify a few things." "There's nothing to clarify," she said. "We found your shell accounts." Denton chuckled softly. "Found is such a strong word. You mean the accounts you believe tie back to me?" "They do tie back to you," Rose snapped. "You stole from my firm. You framed me. You tried to bury the evidence." Now, Denton said, raising a hand. "Let's keep our voices low. We're in a hospital." Alex stepped forward, positioning himself between the two. "Say what you came to say," he growled. Denton's eyes flicked to Alex's arm brace, his temple bruise, the tightness in his posture. "Ah yes," Denton murmured, "the loyal bodyguard. I heard about the accident. Tragic, really. Highways can be unpredictable." Rose's breath sharpened, fury rising so fast she took half a step forward before Alex stopped her with a subtle movement of his hand. Denton continued, voice smooth as silk. "I came here, Rose, because I think you're making a very dangerous mistake. You're chasing the wrong villain." "Really?" Rose said. "Then who should I be chasing? The Tooth Fairy?" Denton sighed patiently. "You're emotional, understandable. Stress affects judgment." "Stress didn't forge documents," Rose shot back. "Stress didn't plant a lockbox in my storage room. Stress didn't delete 2 weeks of security footage." Denton tilted his head, expression softening with pity. "You poor thing. You're starting to believe your own paranoia." "My paranoia?" Rose said, laughing once sharp, humorless. "Your men followed me. They cornered me." "Men?" Denton blinked with expertly performed confusion. "Rose, I don't employ men like that." Alex took one step closer. "Then who ran me off the road?" Denton's eyes flicked over Alex's injuries again, calculating, not concerned. "Mr. Reed, you're assuming I care enough to harm you. I assure you, my attention is focused elsewhere." Rose's heartbeat drummed in her ears. His calm terrified her more than violence, because it meant he thought he had already won. "You're desperate," Rose said, "and sloppy." Denton chuckled again. "If I were desperate, you'd be in a very different situation, but I'm here to offer you a way out." "I don't want your way out," she said. "I want justice." Something flickered across his face, brief, sharp irritation, then vanished. "Justice," he repeated softly. An interesting word. "Do you know what justice really is, Rose? It's power. Whoever controls the narrative controls justice. And right now, I control your narrative." "Not anymore," she said. She lifted the steel case slowly, deliberately. Denton's eyes followed the motion. A slight muscle in his jaw tightened. "Ah," he said quietly, "so that's what this is about." "This is everything you did," Rose said. "Everything you buried. Everything you thought no one would find." Denton stepped forward just one measured step. "You think that folder can save you? You think a few spreadsheets and reports will rewrite the story already shaping in the media?" He leaned in slightly. "They're painting you as unstable, Rose. Overworked. Slipping." Rose stiffened. The words cut too close. Denton continued. "You vanished into the mountains. The board questioned your emotional fitness. You reportedly snapped in the last meeting. A woman under pressure." "A woman under attack," Rose corrected. "But still standing." Alex shifted, ready to intervene if Denton stepped closer. But Denton didn't. He simply clasped his hands behind his back. "No one will believe you," Denton said softly, "because you've already written your own downfall." Rose's fingers tightened on the case. "Then let's see which story the federal investigators believe." For the first time, Denton's expression cracked. Barely. But Rose saw it, the subtle narrowing of his eyes, the faint tension in his throat. He hadn't expected her to reach this level. He hadn't expected her to fight. "You think Avery will save you?" he asked. "Avery is hungry," Rose replied. "Hungry for a case that will make her career. And you, Charles, you're a feast." Alex almost smiled. Denton didn't. "You're making a mistake," Denton whispered. "You already made yours," Rose said. "You underestimated me." For a fraction of a second, tension thickened like the air before a storm. Then Denton straightened. His smile returned, brittle this time. "This isn't over." "No," Rose said. "It's finally beginning." Denton turned to leave, but hospital security fell in behind him, escorting him out at Alex's silent nod. Rose watched him disappear through the lobby doors, swallowed by the cold night beyond. When he was gone, her knees wavered. Alex caught her arm gently. "You did it," he said quietly. "You stood your ground," she exhaled shakily. "I'm not finished yet." "No," he said, "but you're winning." She looked up at him, this man who had nearly died for her, who stood beside her even when she tried to push him away. "Alex," she whispered, I was terrified." He softened. "I know. Not for me. A beat. For you." His breath hitched just slightly. Enough for her to see it. Enough for her to know everything had changed. "Rose," he murmured, voice low. She stepped closer. "When this ends," she whispered, "when justice is finally done, I don't want to keep standing alone." His eyes held hers for a long, unbroken moment. Warm. Certain. And then he said the words she didn't know she needed. "You won't." Outside, sirens wailed faintly. Inside, Rose inhaled deeply, bracing for the final battle. Denton had declared war, but she was done surviving. It was time to win. In the end, Rose's struggle reminds us that strength isn't the absence of fear, it's the courage to stand up, even when the world is quietly rooting for your fall. Justice often begins in silence, built not by grand gestures but by the small moments when we refuse to be intimidated, refuse to surrender, and choose to trust the right people. And sometimes, the person who stands beside us in our weakest moment becomes the one who helps us rise stronger than before.